Alrighty, folks, we will get this kicking off here. I see a few people coming into Zoom. In the chat panel, this one here I prefer versus the Q&A. If you can use the chat here, let me know if you can see and hear me. See my screen and hear my voice. Can you folks hear me? Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure here. So, all right, looking like a all right, we got a few over on the YouTube side as well. For those of you that are in the YouTube side, you wanted to join, I believe. If you want to join to the Zoom side, here you go. You can join, I believe, that link. Use that link to get into the Zoom side of things. All right, so we're looking like a pretty shallow crowd, already 3 minutes past the half-hour mark here. So with such a small crowd, like I said the other day, I'm not going to try to do this as an instruction necessarily. We'll do this more as a Q&A here for you folks. So if anybody is comfortable on the Zoom side here, I'll turn mics on. Just let me know. As long as we're at 5 people in Zoom right now, as long as it stays, I'll say under 10, I think I'll turn a mic on. So let me know in the chat panel if you want me to turn a mic on. And I'll do that for you. You can, straight out ask your questions like that. If not, ask some questions in the chat panel of me. I will, like I do on any of my other 3:30 sessions, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of the weeks, keep you best entertained and go over any market thoughts or software thoughts that I have specifically. But like I always say, it's better if you folks are asking the questions and driving the content when it's such a small crowd, to try to get you what you were more specifically looking for. So Todd, how are you? I see you just joined a moment ago. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're moving up 6 here now. BTBT. No, yeah, I was just looking at BTBT. I don't know why it was on my screen, to be honest. I'm not sure what I clicked that led BTBT to be on my screen. All right, we're moving up. We've got 7 now. So, all right, it's still at this stage, I think, and I'm recognizing most of these names in here as repeat offenders with me. So folks, like I said, I think it's better if you ask some questions and I answer those questions. Can kind of more point direct into some things that maybe you're looking to get out of the software, looking to understand how the software works or what it does in those regards. All right. All right, so the questions here. Chris, in default layout, I have 6 windows of new high versus new lows. And I want to delete those windows. How do I do it? So you're just going to go and you'll X out that window, whatever it is, an X in that window, and then resave the default layout after you've killed that. Does it, let me know if that makes sense. So, you'll close those windows and then you'll go File, Save Layout, and you'll save that as default layout over the old default layout, and it'll carry forward those changes. I think that's what you're asking. Let me know. I'm curious here on this down yesterday and up today, what this looked like. Another awful day in the market here. Wow, very little down yesterday and up today out of this window. iHeartRadio, I haven't seen that in a while. And again, Chandru, if you want to let me know if that answered your question there. And then let's see, Michael, how can you show me how to make custom scan? I'm new and I've checked out channels. Yes, of course, this is exactly the kind of stuff we'd like to see. Open. No, I did not get it. All right, let's try that again. And then I'll circle back again to you, Michael. So Chandru, when you default layout, I have 6. I want to delete these windows. How do I delete it? Are you talking about open windows in your layout like this? Because it's just simply, for example, if I were to go, all right, yeah. So if you just close any one of these out, so for example, here, so for example, here, if I click, an X on any one of these items here, let me load some stuff. Let me load some windows. So let's just say that, I wanted to get rid of these 2 windows had been a part of this original layout here, all right? Simply close those 2 windows, all right? And then go File, Save Layout, and save it here. Should default to be default_layout. This here will be the layout that loads every time you start trade ideas. That's your default layout. Of course, if you want it to be something different, you can rename the layout and then you'll have that, renamed here like that. All right. But anytime it's named this default_layout like this, it's a LTI file, that will be the layout that loads every time. If you were saving it to the cloud, you can just resave it to the cloud, the layout, you go load from, file, save or share to cloud. You can click entire layout and then rename it and save it. And it'll just be there with the old layout of the cloud. And you could always delete that as well. Come in here and select the old layout and delete. I think that gets you what you're looking for. And again, if not, let me know. So yeah, Michael, starting any scan from scratch will come to new, and we decide, are we going with an alert window or a top list window? We'll do for this exercise, we'll start with an alert window, and everybody's alert window is going to default to be something. I forget exactly what it says. I think it's going to be like breaking out on volume will be the window's name for everybody when they start. And you can change what your default blank alert window starts with, or your new default alert window start with. This just happens to be what I did mine as. Try to keep it very simple. What's in here for me starting off, and just a few filters that I'm big into using. But this is what the configure looks like. Whole bunch of tabs in here. They're mostly pretty straightforward on these tabs. The window building itself will start, I want to say, in. All right, perfect. Glad that got you there, Chandru. All right, I think the window building itself will start with, I go back and forth whether you should start with selecting an alert or filters. Alert windows have 2 components to them. So let's start with that first. Alerts are going to be events. So these here, new high, new low, new ask high, new low bid, items like these, this single icon, those are going to be your events, or better known as alerts. I wish we kind of called them events instead of alerts, but that it is what it is. Then you also have your filters. Your filters will look like this. There'll be a dual set of icons here. This teal color will indicate a minimum value that you'll add for that filter, and this purple color will indicate a maximum value that you can add for that filter as well. So the first thing, we do is with building a scan is say, what am I looking for? So I think a great place to start is with price. So we can use the search bar here and type price. All right. And that's going to return us these different items where, price is involved in some way or form. Price itself here. We can see the units are here. All right. We could select that and we'll go add filter. So we've selected it here. We'll add filter. If you have questions along the way of what I'm doing, stop me, please ask me, fire those away for me. All right. Now we're in here in the window specific filter. So if you noticed in that search, when I clicked on this and I clicked add filter, it took me up here to the window specific filter. All right. And now I can add a minimum and maximum value. You don't have to add any value to any filter, but the filter won't return anything in the alert window or won't search based on those criteria without any data added to it, without any information added to it. So for example, we wanted to look at stocks in between, let's say, a minimum of $5 and a maximum of $100, all right? And so now we're at the basis of a scan. And then we could come back to search and we could say, we can scroll through. How do I delete symbols list? All right, I'm going to circle back to that in a moment for you, my friend. Let me finish out on this build and the scan. All right. And now let's say, we could just scan through here. If we're not sure exactly what direction we want to go with the scan, we could just kind of scroll through here and see what's available for filters. Okay. And if we have a question, what any of these filters are doing, we can have two options here. We can right click. If it wants to work. There we go. Select the filter. I'm sorry. Select the filter. So it's highlighted, see in this blue, and then you could right click and pick help. And that will bring you to this page here. I'll bring you directly to the filter you have a question about, and you'll get a definition for that filter here. Usually there's some kind of example in it too to help you understand what the values in that filter will be if you add them. All right. And then aside from the right click, there's also whatever you've highlighted, you can click the help here, and that will bring you to that same page, right to the location where that filter definition is. All right, so back into this, we're scanning, we can scroll through to look for inspiration or ideas. If there's something we have in mind that we want to look for right away, for example, RSI, we could type RSI, all right, and we'll see what we have to offer you in those. So we can put it, for example, a 15-minute RSI in the scan. I've now highlighted it. I can add that filter, and I can give it a minimum and or maximum value. So I could say, on a 15-minute, I want to see, let's say, a minimum of 45, for example. All right. There's what we call the show me function on the filters as well. I think this is a great function to know, great feature to know about. This magnifying glass right here in the middle. If we click that, it'll give you this page right here, this segment right here. And it's telling you what adding the value will do to this. And we can change the values right inside here. So if I come to the minimum here and all of a sudden I change that to 15, watch what's going to happen here. All right. There we go. So now it's telling me, show me stocks where the RSI is at least 15. Well, what if I put something in here? Now it'll tell me, show me stocks where the RSI is between 15 and 99. Or if I put 75, not 975, 75. And it'll adjust it just like that in real time. And if I press OK now, you're going to see the values here. They're going to change to that 15 and 75 for building the scan. All right. Next, we're going to come back into the scan here. All right. And well, volume was always good, right? We can search for different items that we have relating to volume. All right, and maybe we want a specific amount of shares minimum traded on the day. So here we go, volume today, the unit of shares. We'll go ahead and highlight that. We'll add the filter. We'll come back to here. And we can say, I want to see at least the stock to trade 350,000 shares, for example. All right. Then we come back to search. And again, so many different filters that are in here. And like I said, if you're picking your brain, you're not exactly sure what direction you want to move in, scroll right through. Inspiration, you never know when it's going to strike. Perhaps you're looking for some kind of range, or you want to implement some kind of options volume, perhaps. A gap might matter to you, all right? Perhaps you want to scan around whole numbers, all right? So here's a great filter, the decimal filter. If we go ahead and we click that help, just want to show you the definition once again. And so here's, the decimal filter, all right? And we can see these advanced filters look at the decimal part of stock price. They are most often used to find stocks trading near the whole number price. All right, to use these, fill in both values with a number that is at least 0.00 and less than 1. The decimal part of the stock must be at least the minimum value and at the most the maximum value, or the alert will not be displayed. Leave both values blank to ignore this filter and show alerts regardless of the decimal value. Examples, so whole numbers only. Set both values to 0, and then you'll see stocks that are trading exactly at a whole number. Here are your examples, all right? And so on and so forth for those decimal values, okay? And so we can go ahead and we'll highlight that. And I see YouTube, there's a couple of questions that came in. Give me a second here. And, we could say, a minimum value of, let's say, 0.95, 0.95, and a maximum value of, let's say, 0.02. And show that this will tell me where, stocks are essentially between those values like that, okay? And we'll go ahead and click OK. All right. And now we have the basis of an alert window here. All right. I think the last one that I want to look at for you, because I think it's always great for people to understand what this filter does, is relative volume. All right. And here's a relative volume alert, not to be confused with the filter that we're going to work with. They're very similar, but not exactly the same. We click add that filter. What the relative volume filter does is it looks back 10 days and gives us a ratio average of the volume over those 10 days, okay? So 1 equals normal volume, 0.5 would equal half the volume it's doing, 2 would equal 2 times, 3 would equal 3 times, so on and so forth. And what will happen is when an alert happens with that stock, it's basically saying that this stock has a relative volume of X amount, and at the continued, if the stock were to continue at the exact pace it is, that's where it's headed. Of course, if the volume slows down, relative volume will react accordingly. And we could see that, going on here in the single stock window. So for this exercise on the scan, we're going to put a 3 relative volume, and we are now going to come to press OK. And that brings us to the summary tab. There are other tabs in here. I'm going to leave those for another moment. Maybe we'll circle back to those today. Perhaps we get them on another day. I want to catch up on some of the other questions too, but this is the general basis of building a scan. Now we'll give the alert window a name. We'll call it BUILDING in Zoom alert window. All right. And so we're looking at one missed big component. I'm sorry. We did not add the alert or the event. Okay. So in the summary, it does say that there's an alert here. It's a default that I've used for all alert windows when I create a new one. All right. We have to decide a new event on the day, a new high, new ask high, new filtered high. All these are items here. We could do for standard deviation. We could do percent up for the day, large bids. There's so many different items in here. And again, there's no one that's a master of all of them, but that's what the help feature is for here. All right. To understand what these are. In this exercise, we're just going to go with the simple new high alert here. We're going to click add alert. And now it brings us to the selected alerts here. All right. And we need to put a check mark in the one we want to use. So I remove the check mark from cross resistance because we're not going to use that. I put a check mark here. You can see there's these fields here. These are called alert filters, not to be confused with the Windows specific filters. The example to use in this here is going to be 365 in this field would be looking for a 52-week high. That means that we're counting weekends here. If we leave this field blank, we're just looking at a new high today, which is what we're going to do with this here. Now we can press OK. So our event or alert that has to happen to trigger the stock has to be making a new high on the day. Then not only does it have to be making a new high, but every one of these filters has to be satisfied. The price range, the relative volume minimum, the minimum amount of shares, the RSI, the in between the RSI, and this decimal has to be. All right. And if I press OK, we're going to see what we get. And so the last alert that came through this was DPCS. We can take a look at that chart and we can see that's quite an interesting looking stock. Now, something I want to note here on this, all right? And then I'm going to circle to some other questions and then maybe we'll get into a topless building, all right? When this alert came through at 3:42 p.m. my time, all right? That's the last alert that came through it on today. We could see that the relative volume at that alert time was 531. If we look at the relative volume on it now, we can see it's 524 here on our single stock window, okay? That means that it's The volume has essentially left the stock at this point since its last trade, all right, and moving down. So we're saying at this time, at this pace, that's what's happening right now for the volume. But that pace has to continue for the day. That pace has not continued. So that's the result we see moving down. And that's the power of relative volume. It's a twofold power, what it was doing at the time of the alert and what it's going to be doing moving forward as we continue to maybe monitor a stock that might interest us. All right. So that's the basis on stock building, okay, or scan building for alert windows. Your top list windows are going to be exactly the same, only there's no event and no timestamp. Top list will update every 30 seconds. So if we come and we go to new top list, all right, notice here that we skip alerts. There's no alert in here. There's no event, just filters. And there's no selected alerts tab. Before it went strategies, search, selected alerts, window specific filters. There's no selected alerts. So this is just going to ping back and forth to the server every 30 seconds with all the stocks that meet that criteria of the scan. The other caveat difference is our sort. Top list will sort based on a certain filter as well. So it'll bring the stocks that you're sorting from to the top, if we choose biggest on top, or from the smallest on top. We have that option. So just for example, let's say that 500 stocks meet our scan. Well, how do those stocks get ordered? Excuse me, they're going to be ordered based on the filter that we choose. So in the sort tab, it has a few selections already based on some defaults that I have going on here. But if we wanted to sort on something that we didn't have as an option, we would come to search and we could click any one of these here, all right? And we see sort by, all right? And we can get it sort by. You'll also notice that every one of these scans has a set of columns in them. We can add or remove columns by coming to the columns tab, or we can come to search and we can select show column as well. There may be a column we don't want to see that's in there. And if we come to columns, here's the selected columns, the ones that are being displayed. If we were to select it and then move left to right, it'll get rid of that column for us. So that's really as basic as scan building gets. And from there, it becomes as complicated as you want it to become with the filters that you'll add, the values that you'll give to those, alert windows, same idea, and adding that selected alerts. You can have multiple alerts in your window, but the alerts will always act independently of each other and will work in coordination with all the filters of the scan. So I think it's best to leave one alert per window, only because some filters aren't going to make sense to have them with certain alerts. So a scan will be built around a certain set of alerts and a certain alert and set of filters, and adding another alert to it doesn't add value to that scan really. So, that's kind of my feeling on it. Of course, people are welcome to experiment. I'm sure people have done scans with multiple alerts in them and they work for them. Just kind of my experience and my 2 cents in it. And as far as that goes. All right, now, I just want to circle back on some stuff. Hi, Chris, is there a way to be alerted for RSI divergence? No, there's no way to be alerted for RSI divergence. The closest that you can get is with our Market Explorer. If you go to new, go to Market Explorer here, all right? We have some pre-built scans in there to learn more about the Market Explorer. When you open it, you can click this Market Explorer User Guide. It's going to give you this window here explaining the Market Explorer in depth, going through each one of the windows. Everything in Trade Ideas is a right click, okay? It's either everything lives in the menu bar or a right click within the software. So if I right click and I go to server window, you're going to have some windows in here that are scans. You have RSI divergence long, RSI divergence shorts. Those are dailies. Nothing in the Market Explorer can be changed or adjusted. It's a technology that we use for scanning that does not exist in the regular software. There's no way for us to push it out to users to adjust or make scans via the Market Explorer at this time. To cut off some other questions that may come up. Is there any plans to do that? Yes. When will that happen? I don't know. It could be a year. It could be never. I don't, when it comes to development stuff, I have very little information or knowledge to share. Unfortunately, I'm more of a how things function in the software kind of person. So that's the best we can do, Ansel, as far as that guy goes. All right. Is RSI listed as a column and watch manually? Yeah, that's going to be your best option. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's impossible to do with our regular software also for the RSI divergence. It's just if there's a way to do it, we haven't figured it out ourselves, at least not consistently get it working as well as we did with the Market Explorer for those daily charts on RSI longs and shorts. You can try to mess with RSI and position in range, change filters and things like that, using the RSI filters. But you're going to return probably some stuff that looks good to you and probably some stuff that doesn't look good to you. All right. And that'll be, that's the best we can do there. Pal, hi, Chris. Can you tell me if the layouts are the same when you order the premium or standard program? I understand that you don't get the AI. Yes. Anything in the channel bar, with the exception of Holly, obviously, will all be the same as far as the channel bars. Any layout that I have that you want, I'm happy to share. Or if you see a layout that Steve or Jamie or Andy or anybody else, we can share any one of those layouts. If the AI was incorporated in one of those layouts, then obviously the AI won't transfer over to you, or the access to the AI won't. But other than that, any of the regular scanning abilities is the same for standard and premium. The only differences with the standard and premium is Holly AI and back testing. Standard has 10 back tests to try, and that's it. You're done after that, where the premium has unlimited back tests. So that's really it in that regard, for those big ones there as far as standard goes. So yeah, anything you see there, you're looking good there. And then, yeah, I know the ME RSI scan, just looking to see, yeah, no, there's no other customizable way. I'm sorry. So, and then Chandru, let's see, how do I delete a symbols list from channel plus stocks I like? So the only way to update your stocks, I think it's your I like stocks, right, Chandru? You're looking at the ones that you put a heart in the chart. If it's the heart in the chart, there's only two ways to edit that list. All right, you have to go through and unheart those charts, or you can do it on the what's it called, the account page on our homepage. So if you were on our, let me duplicate. If you're on our homepage, all right, really it's on any one of our pages. It doesn't matter if it's our homepage or anywhere else, all right? This login up here, all right, this is the accounts management page. Sorry, the word was eluding me. This accounts management page, you can come here, you can log in there. I'm auto logged into mine. And you can go to edit my liked symbols list, and you can edit it here. And those are the only two places you can edit the my liked list. Let me know if that's what you were referencing. And again, to do that, to go over that again, you're on the homepage here, trade-ideas.com. Here, I'll share that in the chat here. All right. And on that page up here, you'll get a logged in. And when you come to that logged in, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I think, as you get further along and become more comfortable with the software, certainly more advanced, there's some items to look at in here for sure. And yes, yeah, thank you, Omni. Yes, 10 charts versus 20 charts in the standard versus premium. I use so few, I use 4 charts, maybe 5 charts once in a while, but 4 is really all I ever use. So it's been a long time since I used more than 4 charts, to be honest. And so in there, the my like symbols list, and that's where you'll be able to edit that. All right. Let me know. I hope that answered that question, but let me know if not there, Chandru. All right. So I believe that catches me up on those ones. And then how can I make custom scan? All right. So, and then Michael, I can circle back. If you have more questions about building alert windows and scans, let me know. And we've got, we're only at 4 o'clock now. I'm here for another half an hour, so we can, continue to push forward. Also, I'm enabling everybody in Zoom. All your microphones in Zoom are enabled now. All right. There's only 7 of you in here, or yeah, 7 of you in here. So if someone wants to unmute and they want to throw a question at me, you want to talk, go ahead. If not, the chat panel is fine. Of course, I know some people like to talk, some people don't like to talk. I personally love to talk. So here we are. Does new high mean high of the day in real time or all-time highs? New high, as far as that goes, what I was showing means new high in real time, time stamped to that exact second. We can do something for all-time highs as a filter, but not all-time highs as an alert. But combined with the filter, I guess it would be an alert. I will try. Thanks. All right. I'm going to take that as that worked for you, or that answered your question, but you're still unsure about how to do that. So let me know. I can circle back on that. But I'm pretty sure you meant the my like stocks with the heart, right? Just let me confirm that for me if that's what you're talking about. My like as in the heart, and as in this here on the channel bar. Yes. All right. Perfect. Perfect. All right. And so what you could do, like if you were trying to make a new high, so yeah, this is, another great example of building a scan together, all right, and a specific scan. So if we wanted to build a scanner for stocks making new all-time highs, this would be a twofold. So first I would come here and I would come to new high, all right, and I'd add that alert, all right. So we're going to select that one, all right, and we want it to be a new high on the day. Then we're going to go for position, all right, in range, and we want it in position. We have all these different position and range filters, which are among my favorite filters. And we can go to position in lifetime range, right? And we can add that filter, and we could put a minimum of, let's say, 99. So right now, this scan, as it stands, would say, show me stocks that are making a new high on the day that are also within 1% of their lifetime range, essentially, or reworded, they're 99% above the low of the lifetime range. All right. And so that's how that would work. And technically, this would be scanning for every stock in the US market on the major exchanges, because in exchanges, another tab to look at here, the exchanges that'll always be default are just your regular stocks. Pink Sheets, OTC B, OTC QX, your BATs, and any of your other ones here, Toronto and all that. Those are not put in by default. You could always add a check mark into any of those if you want to scan for those, of course. That's entirely up to you. But we default everyone to the major exchanges. So if it's making essentially a new all-time high, now if I wanted to ensure it was absolutely a new all-time high, then I would simply put a 100 here. And that would mean now the stock has to be 100% above the low of its lifetime range, or at the high of its lifetime range. However you want to word that, but that's the wording on that. All right. I'm on the web version. I'm not seeing the same tabs as you. Yes. All right. On the web version, yes, it is slightly different. Let me I'll load up a web version real quick for us here. Just give me a second to do so. TI Pro for the web. Okay. All right. And so for you web-based users, now anybody on the web, it is a slightly added cost outside of Bootcamp, but there is AWS or Parallels or Microsoft 360 as virtual machines. You could run any of those. I don't know what, different people do have different Amazon kind of accounts that allow for some AWS usage that's included with them. Same with Microsoft. So I don't know, some professional Microsoft accounts and things like that will allow for some Microsoft 360 that I think is included. If not, obviously not. If you're on certain Macs or certain versions of Macs, I know they have what's called Boot Camp. I know that allows for that as well. So, that's another option for some Mac users as well, for virtual machine, meaning you'd be able to use the downloaded version. All right. With all that said, in here, all right, for the web version, you've got new, where you're going to find all those things. So alert, top list, multi, all these things like that are there. All right. Then you'll find the rest of the stuff here in tools, help, and account. All right. And tools, you have your load from cloud, save to cloud. You have your default saves here. All right. Like you would, it's, more similar to that local save that the app has. Still web-based, but along those lines. When you're building, let's say, for example, if we go to new and alerts, again, it's going to have some defaults that are going to come in here. All right. So here's, that window. You can right click and configure that window and come into here. All right. And if you go to alerts, then you'd search for the alert you want and put the check mark in it, or scroll through and put the check mark in it. All right. And then the same concept with the filters. All your filters are listed here. All right. But you can always search, and again, if you wanted, for example, RSI, you search RSI, and now you can see RSI is populated towards the top underneath what already has values. add values, you know, and if, you know, for example, volume. All right, here's all your volumes are going to start to come up if you want position and range. All right, again, you know, all these different position and ranges, things like that are all going to come in here for you. All right, and so you could search like that. And of course, as I said before, sometimes you don't know what you want to look for and you're just looking for inspiration in scan building. You just give a scroll through just like you would in the app. Same here. So I know the tabs are a little different. There's a little different look and a little different feel. All the same data points still exist. The functioning of those data points are exactly the same. Just the location of them is a little different. So hopefully that's giving you a little more insight there. Same concept on all these items here. All right, for the symbols, list, columns, exchanges. There's also this 3-bar here. All right. The 3-bar is going to give you a lot of other, you know, give you some of the other options here that you would find on a right click as well. All right, for any of these here. We are slowly, much slower than I think a lot of people would like, us included, trying to get the web version up to speed with the app. The issue is the coding, the language, having people that can do both languages and efficiently. You know, something that's eluded us on our end on the development side, but it is something that we're aware of. It is something that we're working on, trying to get the web-based and the physical app or the downloadable app, you know, more close to each other, or closer to each other, I should say. If you have any other specific web-based questions, let me know. You know, I'm happy to answer those. I'm not a web expert, but I have dabbled in it enough to fumble my way through it with you here. And again, you know, anybody in Zoom that, you know, wants to unmute, I've enabled everybody's microphone in here. So if someone's, you know, chomping at the bits to let us hear your voice, by all means, jump right on there. And again, you know, we're going more open forum. Like I said, you know, I was expecting about 60 people here today, and there's, you know, 7 on Zoom, and it looks like 3 or 4 on YouTube, as far as I can tell. So, I like I said, when it's a small crowd, when it's probably 20 or under, you know, give or take, I'm, you know, not a hard threshold. I think it's better if we do it more open forum, and you folks drive the content more. I like to say I can't answer the questions that are not asked. Again, for those that aren't familiar here, I would like to, I'm going to close the web-based version for now, but I can always come back to it if we need. Now, I want a couple of things we'll note here. Note that I logged into the web and that I've now been logged out of the app. All right. If you logged in from one place to another, no matter where you are, it'll kick you from the first connection. So you can have trade ideas on as many computers as you want all over the world, but it's one connection per account. I call it the no Netflix clause. But the real reason for it is the exchanges. The exchanges charge every time someone logs in and hits data from the exchanges, there's a charge for it on our end, not you guys. You guys have paid for the, you know, we cover the charge in your subscriptions, how that works. All right. So, you know, we can't have 10 people logging onto the same account hitting us with nonstop charges from the exchanges. So that's the main reason for it. With that said, if you ever run into this situation here where you've been logged out for any reason, if you go to account and you go to reset connection, you'll see it all comes right back online. And there we go, green ball, everything looks good again for me here. So that is that. I believe I'm all caught up in, if RSI is a filter, does that mean I could code a custom around RSI values? No, you cannot. Customs work with short codes. So the coding has to exist within the system again. So this again goes back to, this is going to get into some advanced stuff, but I'm going to do this here regardless, since there's no other questions coming in. If we come to the accounts management page, so again, I started here on Trade Ideas site. It doesn't matter which tab you're on. The accounts management page, I click login, it brings me here. If we come to the accounts management page and you come to down here under account, you see custom formulas. We have what we call our formula editor here, all right? This is now accessible also within the software itself. On this page though, and this is where I'm more familiar with it, we have this PDF. So right click and open that in new tabs. And here are some instructions on how customs can be created. When I say custom, it is not a code compiler. So for example, the one example I love to give is we do not have EMAs as a data point to scan for. Therefore, you cannot create a EMA filter, all right? But we have short codes of all the filters that exist within the systems. In this PDF is some instructions that goes over what this is, how the formula editor works, and some great examples of how to use the formula editor, all right? And we can see there's some pre-existing codes in here, last and price, most recent close, expected open, seconds after open, so on and so forth. These are all short codes actually that can be used to create custom formulas. All these different items that live in here, you're all welcome to peruse through this at your own leisure. And some great examples of how this works here is, so for example, we cannot compare candles. We can compare time frames though. So for example, we can't compare one candle to the next on volume, but what we could do is compare one time frame to the next on volume. So for example, this is a custom formula that was created as an example showing right here, this will compare a stock's volume in the last minute to the stock's volume in the previous 4 minutes, all right? And it does that as a ratio essentially, all right? We can see the same thing here, compares the last 5 minutes to the previous 10 minutes, all right? And so on and so forth. These are just examples, but much more can be done in this sense, all right? And so anybody with the Trade Ideas account, does not matter if it's premium or not, can do this. In the formula editor page, that's some of the codes that exist within the system up here that I just went through. Most of the codes live in this one here. So right click, open a new tab, all right? All right, Todd, thanks for attending. It looks like you're already gone, but all the same, appreciate you coming in. And again, as moving forward, I'll start to enable mics when it's such a small crowd in here, and perhaps one of you will let me hear your singing voice one of these days. But all right, so back here are the other short filter codes, and this is where a majority of them live, all right? And so you can see them all here. Here's the code, there's the units, there's the name of the actual filter. That's the original icon look of the filter. All right, and so you can go through and you can see all those different ones that are within here. Oops, excuse me, the wrong thing. Apologize, just had a yawn to get out. Didn't want to hit you with that yawn. All right, so all these exist within here. You could take any of these codes and you can put them together in different expressions using, for example, these different standard C operators. You don't have to be some master code expert. You just have to understand what some of these languages mean here. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory, greater than, less than, adding, subtracting, multiplication brings it to make something in a percent format, for example, equal to or greater than. Your if statements, your and statements, your absolute true false statements. All right, so things like that. All right. So that's all in there for you. Like I said, nothing, you don't have to be some master coder or some math whiz or anything like that. This will bring me into my next segment on our education page. So there's a lot of stuff that's on our homepage that I think is great for everybody to really navigate and understand. All right. If we come to the education page, all right, I'm going to go in order of some stuff. All right. First and foremost, our user's guide. This is a full user's guide, fully searchable. All right. You click that, you come here. All right. You can scroll down or you can hit the arrow down, whatever you want. There's sections for all kinds of different items in here. The toolbar, channel bar, A Windows alert, T Windows top list, M window multi, S window single stock window. All right. Charts, price alert, sounds, so on and so forth. All right. And we have a custom formula section even here. All right. And you can come in here and get short and skinny on a lot of this that I just went over. There's a little more detail in here, some other links. Here's your documents are in here again that we just went over, those 2 documents. You can scroll down and how different things work within the formula editor itself. All right, Stephanie did a really amazing job going over all this, graphics, formats, all these things like that. Of course, you have us through email. Always hit us. I guess we changed the email, but for now, as far as I know, it's the info@trade-ideas.com. I believe it's going to be support at at trade-ideas.com is what we're changing it to. Some people have had a lot of things landing in the spam from us, and we're trying to cut that out. It's not possible for us to know if our emails are landing in the spam. We answer every single email. We never ignore anybody. So if you've ever had something you sent in and it didn't get to us, check your spam box, please. All right. So what I'm really trying to do is highlight the education page for a moment here. I want to do that kind of quickly though. So you have that user's guide. Also in the user's guide, it's searchable. All right. So if we were back here on this page here, all right, and we're not finding what we want specifically on these tabs, or we're trying to really locate something specific, click full table of contents. You'll get this search here, all right, and you can search whatever it is, docking, for example, or cloud. All right, and you get all these results here and peel through them. There's a lot of repeat and repetition in this, but that's because there's a lot of repeat and repetition within the software as well. All right, so that's covering those bases there. And so the last thing I'm going to touch and circle back to this is RSI. These are the codes for RSI. That's all that exists within the system there for you to work with. All right. So 1, 2, 5, 15, 60 and daily RSIs. All right. And so you could do some kind of comparison of them. All right. With those codes, take this code and somehow this RSI has got to be greater than that, or this RSI less than that, so on and so forth. All right. Back to the educations tab, this here getting started. This is what brings you to me right now in the Zooms. All right. These 20 lessons, they're a little dated. They were great when they first came out. They're just point and click videos, very short, 20 of them, no sound. All right. Your daily support session. What we're doing right now at this time frame, I was doing Monday through Friday on this time frame on YouTube. Now I do it Monday through Friday on YouTube, but there's a Zoom that's, what we're doing like this on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The idea behind this whole Zoom thing is to get people to register, come, that are fresh new signups. The daily supports, for YouTube are done at noon Eastern every single day, Monday through Friday. You get a different person every day. I take the noon Mondays. Tuesday is Michael Noss. Wednesday is Steve Gomez. Thursday is Jamie. And Andy rounds us out on Fridays. Of course, he will not be here tomorrow because the market's closed and we will not be here tomorrow. But with that said, so you have 2 sessions every single day with us live here. All right. So that's there. Free trading room. I highly recommend getting in there if you're not in there. All right. The daily webinars, they go every other week. Monday, Wednesday 1 week, then the next week's Tuesday, Thursday. Sign up for those. They're 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. More educational videos here. Back to basics. If you're still someone who's learning market mechanics and learning what trading actually is, back to basics literally starts with what is a stock. All right. With Michael Noss teaching his wife, Jess, how to trade from what is a stock. All right. So, that's the short and skinny here of that. There's other trading books and documents in here, but what I was really trying to highlight is there's a ton of stuff on the educations tab. All right, please come join me every single day. I like it when people are here. I like it when you folks ask questions. All right, there's a lot of stuff on the overall website. Peruse through the website. All right, check out the FAQs, things of that nature. All right, so that covers everything I wanted to there. RSI value. Yes, I basically want to say 5-minute RSI is greater than the last 5 minutes on a custom filter. So you can't look back on it, but what you could say is, all right, yeah. So you could say RSI 5 minutes is greater than the previous 15 minutes. I believe is what I think what you could do is how that would work. Kind of like what you do with the current 5 minutes is greater than the past 10 minutes of the volume, for example. But yeah, definitely some food for thought for you in there. Like I said, there's a lot that can be done. In fact, I did not realize how much could be done with that until Stephanie started building some scans for people. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these people think that they have the magic scan and she builds a scan out for them and they say, well, it's not finding exactly what I wanted. No, it's finding exactly what you asked for. May not return what you think it's going to return, but it'll find what you want. Going back to there is no magic scan. We return ideas and still got to trade those ideas. But there's a lot that can be done. And I'm sure there are people that have made some absolutely outstanding scans via that stuff. I just never went down that route. But I am trying to get more versed in custom. So again, anybody has questions, and again, let's see, I think Michael actually dropped out on us, who was asking the questions about the web version and everything. So that leaves me with just 5 of you on Zoom and a few of you there on YouTube. So please, folks, ask questions. All right, Daniel, I see that. Daniel, you look like you're a newcomer to the Zoom side of things. I've said before, I enabled everybody's mic. So if anybody has a question, they want to unmute and ask that question on Zoom here, fire those away for me. All right. And if you're not comfortable with asking a question via voice format, please type it in the chat panel of Zoom. All right. I'm trying to think of what's something else that we should be doing here. And I think maybe what that something is let's go into compare count windows. All right. So for those of you that are unaware, compare count windows are very similar to our alert windows. So this is a set of compare count windows that I use every day. These give me generally an overall market snapshot based on, not new, just my real name for change. Gotcha. All right, Daniel, cool. So essentially what the compare count windows is doing that I have in front of me here is they're looking at stocks that are making a new high on the day or a new low on the day with some volume metrics in there. All right. And then they're sectioned off by market cap. So these are going to be stocks that are under 2 billion. These are stocks 2 to 4 billion. These are stocks greater than 4 billion. These are stocks greater than 5.4 billion. Now, these are a set of windows that Jamie Hodge created a long time ago. I use them still. I've always been a little fuzzy, and I guess I'm going to have to ask him. I never thought to, but why the greater than 4 billion and the greater than 5.4 billion? I'm sure he had a reason there, as he's a longtime trader and finance guy. I am not. I have only been trading and doing this stuff for about 5 years. So I'm still a newcomer to this world as far as I'm concerned. But the idea here is I get a great market snapshot with these. All right. What I want to show you here is that I can kind of get a feel for what the overall market is doing by these windows. Now you can see here coming in around, let's say, the last few minutes of the market, we could see a big spike on selling here on all of these market cap frames. All right. And I know if I look at a SPY or a diamonds or a Qs or an IWM chart that the market was selling off. All right. And here we go. Here's a SPY chart, 15 minutes. Look at that. We were selling off. And then that last 15 minutes, we really sold off here. We were kind of going flat for about 45 minutes or so before that, right? And so I can see that sharp sell-off reflected there, reflected here. Let me get rid of my drawing because you're going to still see that. There we go. Another one, IWM. Or not. Voila. IWM selling off. And last but not least, now they all sold off to various degrees, but we can see they all sold off. All right. And so I don't need to have all the market charts up. I've got this compare count window. There's other things we can do with this compare count window. I created the other day, for example, I haven't tested it. I said I was going to, but I just haven't because I didn't think about it until right now. A new year highs versus new year lows compare count window. What I want to do is go in and show you the configuration of this. So if I right click and I come to configure, all right, we have green data and red data because as you could see, we've got the red data and green data here. And we saw before the lines that were moving. All right. Right now there's nothing going on because it's after hours. But if we go to the green data and configure, it looks exactly like an alert window here. All right. And if we come to selected alerts, we can see I have a new high for the day here. And I put a 365 in there, all right, for looking back for a year in that field. Remember, we discussed before what putting a number in there would do to it. And then the window specific filter, I just added some filters to try to get a little bit of volume and make sure we cut out some noise and nonsense. So we're looking at stocks that are a minimum of $5. Their relative volume has to be at least 0.7, meaning, they're doing at least 7/10 or 70% of their normal volume. All right. So I don't mind if they're underneath a little bit, because you're going to find your bellwether stocks like an Apple, Google, Amazon, things that move the market don't necessarily have a high relative volume, because they're so huge and there's so much trading that goes on in them all the time. It takes a massive event for those stocks to really spike in volume, but they could have a low volume day and still be a big factor in moving the market overall. So that's why I left that at that, because I want those stocks factored in here. And then I put a minimum value on the shares traded for the day, 350,000 shares. Again, I want to cut the noise out. I mean, a stock that trades 10,000 shares a day, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the big picture, and that doesn't play a role in the big picture of those stocks. I'm not saying they don't have a place. I'm just saying they didn't have a place in this window that I created here. Okay. And so that's essentially what I've done with this window. So that's my green data, right? So that's my new highs. But how do I do the new lows? We come to the red data. And so we click the red data configuration here. All right. And we're looking at very similar stuff, but we're going new lows instead of new highs with the 365. But I left the filters to be the same. And so this is one of those cases where I'd said before, with alert windows, you want one just alert. But now we're comparing things. We're not trying to find different alerts necessarily. We're comparing a new high to a new low, and we want comparable data. And that's why the filters are left the same for both these sets. If something I'm saying is not making sense, let me know. If you want me to cover something more in depth, let me know. I just kind of surmise that the silence means that I'm making sense. We're enjoying the content that I'm providing and moving forward in that sense. So again, feel free to interrupt me, anybody that wants to. So, but that's essentially what I've done. And any day that you load this window here, and I'm going to share it right now with everybody. All right. That's what you'll find here. All right. So file, load from cloud. There it is, CC, new high, all right. Share, here's the URL for you all. Copy, paste, there we go. In the YouTube as well, there you go. And again, there may come a time where there's nobody live to ask a question, or you send in an email, but you want to see also what you can figure out on your own. That user's guide that I keep referencing, right? We come back, education tab, user's guide. Oh, I completely forgot. We don't need just that. Help, user's guide, bang. So we got the user's guide there too. Also in this help, description of all the filters and alerts, again, like the help function that I showed you in the scanning, and also channel descriptions if you have questions on the channels. And again, come to user's guide, and we can look for, somewhere in here is going to be compare count windows, compare counts. There you go. All right. We click that, we'll get all these different items that are in here for us. All right. Another video to help, some clear stuff that's in here for you folks. All right. As we scroll through, here comes the configure, and you can see all these different things here. All right. So, sorry, I was just reading this myself. I hadn't read that in a long time. So, all right, gonna bring us to the bottom of the hour here, folks. I hope you all found that informative. Again, I hope I'm, answering questions that people want. You're getting content that you're looking for out of this, folks. I can't stress enough. I can only answer the questions that are asked, and I'm, like I said, I'm happy to unmute some mics in here when we're small groups on the Zoom side of things. Our success as a company is predicated on your folks' success as traders and users of this platform. And, that's what I'm here for. That's what, the other fellows are here for that are streaming during the day. Same thing with Barry in the room. Barry's a bit of a different flavor in the sense that he's a lot more trading focused, but he can certainly, when he's not caught up in trading and things like that, he can certainly answer software questions during the rest of the day. I learned an awful lot of trading from Barry just by hanging out in there, throwing out a few questions here and there. Really good stuff. So a ton of information, a ton of education. So I beg you folks to utilize it. I also beg you folks to head on to our YouTube page, subscribe and like everything there. And, I'm hoping that it equals some real great success for you folks. All right, Shannon, I appreciate that. I appreciate getting some feedback, even if it's feedback I may not want to hear. It will be helpful to me, to make sure that I'm giving you folks value for what you get. While technically anybody, subscriber not, could log into this, I consider this to be part of your subscription. All right, so I want to make sure that you folks are getting your money's worth. All right. It's a long weekend. We will not be here tomorrow. We will catch you all Monday. I know it's kind of a holiday for some people on Monday too around the world. For example, I know South Africa has a holiday Monday. I never know where anybody is in the world. So, please, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, celebrating whatever you celebrate, even if it's just a lovely spring weekend if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or a fall weekend if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. All right, folks? I thank you very kindly, and I do hope to see you all back here next week. I will cut the screen sharing there, and I will bid you all adieu until the other side of this weekend. Thank you, folks, very much, and take care. Bye-bye.